I must confess I'm feeling a little bit like a remake of Rear Window, and I'm quite determined to get out from this room at some point in the next day or so. Uh, and in the meantime, I thought I would speak up for Snow White, because when we're talking about fairy tales, here's one that's become prevalent: the idea that Rachel Zegler is to blame for the failure of Snow White. Disney's bloated, beleaguered, bafflingly bland $270 million remake of its 1937 animated triumph. Zegler, this actress who we first saw, I think, in West Side Story. She was spectacular. She was in a film there that was made by a master, and I think it's always worth comparing what a master filmmaker, director can do, and the sort of mush that you get for the rest of the year. And Snow White, the direction of Snow White, the cinematography of Snow White is mush. You go from when you're looking at a film, you want the eye to be constantly engaged, and the moves in the camera in Snow White are simply vague and without purpose. They're just moving because they want movement, and that's an illness. That's not a that's not an artistic decision, and it's scatterbrained. In contrast, Steven Spielberg always moves from point of interest to point of interest to point of interest, even when those secondary points of interest. If you're doing a pan, you want to go from Zegler here to Zegler there. You're going to go through other things, and Spielberg would make sure that that's exactly what happens, and that is what happens in West Side Story. It's not what happens in Snow White. So, she finds herself in Snow White, this role of a lifetime, only to suddenly discover that she's out of public favour, not for poor acting, but for tweeting Free Palestine in the same breath as thanking fans for watching the trailer. The backlash from Disney has been calculated but unrelenting. And executives reportedly, there's a fellow called Mark Platt, who flew across the country to New York to tell her to stop tweeting, and his son Jonah Platt has taken up the cudgels. And by the way, this is a theatrical family. The other son, Ben Platt, was in Evan Hansen, was extremely successful on Broadway, and this a social media guru was hired to vet Zegler's online presence. It's less about promoting a princess and more like trying to muzzle a whistleblower. And Snow White has failed, not because of Zegler's politics, but because of its own production. The film had a script that seemed afraid of its own shadow, afraid of its direction, wandered like a dopey character in a fog, with songs as forgettable as they were unnecessary. It tried to walk the tightrope between reverent homage and clumsy revision, and it fell off. And ironically, Zegler was the best thing about it. Critics and audiences alike praised her performance. I praised her performance. Poised, expressive, refreshingly sincere, awful dress. She brought grace to the film that was otherwise devoid of grace. And what of her politics? Well, let's not pretend Disney has ever been a neutral player. The same studio that fired Gina Carano for inflammatory speech is now condemning Zegler for supporting civilians in Gaza. The inconsistency is as laughable as it is hypocritical. And the crux, the comparison with the original. I watched the 1937 Snow White about 3 days ago. I was asked to do a small job, a small illustration job, which I was quite excited about. And and part of it meant trying to copy the Disney style. And it is quite simply a marvel. The animation is delicate and rich. The backgrounds are vibrant, and what's interesting is almost all of them are watercolor. The characterization is nuanced, and the plotting, though simple, is efficient and emotionally resonant. Snow White, often caricatured as passive by the media and promoting this remake, she's nothing of the sort. When you look at the film, she feeds birds, she befriends animals, and crucially, she cleans the dwarves' cottage, not from servitude, but from strategic initiative, hoping that she might earn shelter. She's attacked by the huntsman while she's helping a little bird find its family. She's proactive. She has agency. This idea that she doesn't have agency is nonsensical. It's a projection that has been developed by the Disney studio. Her connection with the prince is immediate, but actually it's not from the kiss at the end. It's from the first 5 minutes of the film. Their musical duet, within minutes of the film starting, establishes a romantic bond that grounds the film. We don't actually know whether the prince knows Snow White or not. All we know is that he goes over a wall to get some time with her, and she runs off and hides. But then she makes herself presentable and appears on the balcony, and the queen is furious. This is storytelling with economy and charm, and it works. And to contrast this with the live-action version of Jonathan, the hoodie-wearing bandit, with more backstory and significantly less charm, you realise the problem isn't Zegler. It's a production that doesn't trust its own legend. The original's simplicity is mistaken for deficiency, and the remake responds by over-explaining everything. And still somehow it says nothing. I love the idea of the extended dance routines, but the problem is a dance is grounded in a reality. The rule is when you can't say something, you sing it. When you can't sing something, you dance it. When the emotion gets too great, the dancing was for no reason. The singing was for no reason in this remake. So what are we left with? A film vilified for its politics? Its star scapegoated for speaking her mind? An industry willing to prioritize optics over honesty? But if Disney hoped to make Zegler small, I think they failed. I think Zegler was foolish, and I think Zegler was unthinking, particularly about her co-star, who's Israeli. But she's off to headline Evita in the West End. She's proven herself unafraid to stand by her principles, even when pressured to perform this sort of princely silence. If Snow White teaches us anything, it's this: the fairest of them all is not the quietest, nor the most palatable, but the one who remains true. And in that mirror, Zegler's reflection stands tall.